So I'm essentially the eighth husband of Elizabeth Taylor here, but I have the advantage of having been able to learn from the seventh husband. So I wanted to start from some of the things he talked about. So he said PowerPoint presentations are made by people with no power and no point of view, so I don't have a presentation. And he also started with the Apple ad, which said, think differently. So I'm an Apple fan, and I do want to warn you that when you think differently, you have to face certain challenges because you're not like everyone else. And sometimes those challenges can include that your presentation won't load on any normal projector, laptop, etc., which is what happened today. But I do have some thoughts to share, and a lot of it, in many ways, resonates with what Anurag has said because I think we come from pretty much the same era, the same generation, the same, shall we say, the ecosystem. And I think, being in Delhi, I do find, I can't not mention this, but when I was in college, we were totally disconnected from the political scenario, really. I mean, it just wasn't relevant to somebody like us. And even while working, even till our 30s and so on, I really didn't feel very engaged with the political system because I didn't actually, there was no meeting of minds. They were talking about something that had almost zero relevance. There were people of a totally different type of community, etc. But what's really changed for me in India today is that two of my former colleagues are contesting the current elections, poverty stricken, and that's really good. And I really think, that's big change that's going on. The second thing that it tells me when a Nandan or a Bala joins politics, and I would guess they're both in their 50s now, and Nandan has already done one pivot, which was at UIDI chairman, is that youth, as Anurag says, is in the mind. You can make a change anytime in your life if you think youthfully. So the demographic is really how open are you to change because you can reinvent yourself so many times in your life. So I've reinvented myself once, and I was in the corporate world. I really enjoyed my IT stint, but I wanted to be a CEO. And when I was probably 35, I told my boss at the time, we have those HR appraisal things, and what's your aim? I said, I want to be a CEO. So he said, okay, have you thought about which company you'd like to be a CEO? So my boss at the time was a CEO. So he's like, I said, no, don't worry about it. It's not this company. Don't worry about it. He said, okay. They said, have you thought about how many people, should be in this company that you will be CEO of? I said, no, I don't particularly care. I just want to be CEO. Okay, it's just a goal. I just want to be CEO. So he thought about it and said, well, that's excellent because then you can start your own company. And so when I turned 40, that is actually what I did. I just started my own company because I figured that's the easiest way to achieve my goal. But the reason I wanted to be CEO was that my learning is that if you want to ever truly control your destiny, then it's easier to be in a position where you control much more of the variables. So it can be achieved in various formats, but essentially you should control more elements of your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be business for those of you who want to be social entrepreneurs, but it does help if you are in control, and I really like to be in control. So let me move on from the philosophy to the actual topic, which was the marketing to the youth. And I think one of the huge changes we are seeing is that 10 years ago, email was this new wonderful marketing tool. And now, if you look at it, everybody wants a me-mail. And I don't want a generic email. I want this communication that is instant and is very personalized to me and is relevant only to me. I don't want you to tell me that, you've got this whole bunch of stuff that you have to sell. I want you to tell me exactly what you have. And Indian retailers are also doing this. Westside, for example, knows that if you have bought a suit, apparently 2 weeks later you will come back and buy a shirt. They don't know why, but apparently that's how it works. When you buy a suit, maybe the sticker price is really, killing you, so you can't afford the shirt at the time, but you take out your suit to wear and you figure that, well, I don't have a nice new shirt to go with it, so you do go back into the shop and buy it. So now they're able to send you an SMS or an email right after you bought your suit saying, hey, hope the suit's working out well for you. Would you like to come and buy the shirt? They've also found that people who buy trousers tend to come back a month later and buy the top. So now we're getting into really customized stuff. And it gets really spooky at times because there's also this lovely case study about a US retailer. And since we're talking about youth, I guess it's okay to talk about this. So when you go to a shop and you start buying baby products, they were offering discounts on future baby products. So you brought, you started buying yourself pregnancy tests, etc. They gave you little coupons on baby oil and baby shampoo, etc. And they would post that to your house or SMS or email it to you. And so somewhere along the way, this teenager had a pregnancy test that was positive, and so she bought herself, more of the pregnancy tests, etc. So it, obviously rang some bells in their system, and shortly afterwards, a small gift hamper arrived for her at her home. All baby goods. So her father got really furious and went online and said, they're damaging the reputation of my daughter. How dare they, send baby stuff to a teenage unmarried daughter, blah, 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 blah. And so it went viral about how these companies are, really going wild with this personalized marketing. And then the daughter came to the father and said, well, I didn't want to tell you, but actually you're going to be a grandfather. So he actually had the grace to retract and apologize to the company, saying, you obviously know more about my daughter than I do. But it also tells you that now with the rise of data and analytics, on the one hand, consumers want to be treated as individuals. On the other hand, companies like Amazon can have claimed that they know what you're going to buy around 5 minutes before you actually buy it. They can just predict that you're going to do it. So, and that's what I find really, really cool about marketing, because when I started, we were still talking about, painting buffaloes and walls and billboards, and I did a stint in Ogilvy and Mather advertising, and that was good old traditional marketing, and it's nice. But, this is much more fun for me because you're actually getting into somebody's mind. So I'm currently doing a course, my first course since leaving IIM Calcutta, and it's with Dan Ariely, the author of Predictably Irrational. There's this lovely site called Coursera, and you can sign up for free courses, and it's actually pretty hectic. But it tells you it's a new science of behavioral economics. And in my view, marketing will transition into behavioral economics. It'll move into more of analytics, big data. That's the kind of marketing that's going to be relevant 10 years from now, not whether you know how to do advertising in a print magazine or a newspaper, because the second thing that I wanted to talk about is that, how many of you know what a media dark household is? Media dark? Not in your syllabus? Okay. Media dark basically used to mean a person who cannot afford a TV or a radio in their house. And so when you say media dark, it usually conjures up this image of this poor household which can't afford to buy anything. But today we have the new Indian media dark household, which is actually households like mine, where we rarely watch TV, we don't actually buy any magazines, and we don't actually read much of the newspaper except maybe the Mint on a Saturday, because we get all our news from Twitter, Facebook, social media, on the screen. A child, because TV is bad for you, etc., is not allowed to watch TV except on a Sunday, and she sometimes gets a screen in her hand, and that's pretty much it. She doesn't actually want to watch TV, and she can't read. So she is also youth, and she is essentially an illiterate media dark child now, despite her spending power. And I think that's another trend that you're going to see in marketing, is that you're not really going to be advertising in traditional media at all, but you have to figure out a way to join the conversation with people on social media who essentially have no time at all to look at your ad and click on it. So how many of you recently clicked on a banner ad? Not one. Oh, one person, awesome. So apparently the statistics of you clicking a banner ad are slightly worse than you're surviving an air crash. So that's obviously a dying industry. Again, so what's going to replace it? Because marketers still want to reach out to their consumers, and yet people don't read, people don't watch TV, and they're not willing to click on banner ads. So I really have to start being creative and creating an integrated experience where I put my product into movies or serials or on YouTube, embedded into the content. So I really have to think far more cleverly than probably 20 years ago when you could afford to be a very lazy marketer. The third trend, and how many of you bought something online recently? Ooh, okay, way more people than clicked a banner ad. Okay. I actually think that 5 years from now, if you have any kind of income, something like 40% of your discretionary spend is going to be online. And I know that there is data which says that in 2020 we're going to have maybe 10% of our commerce online. I don't think that's correct because I think the trouble is with the initial adoption, but once you've tried it and you feel it's safe, you start shifting your spend pretty rapidly, and that's something people haven't considered. So today, living in Bangalore, I spend a minimum of around 20,000 rupees online every month on groceries and those kind of things. And I haven't actually stepped into a retail outlet in the last 3 months. Because for groceries, I don't need to. There's a site called Big Basket, which is run by a fellow alumni. And you could buy all your groceries online. And then I went one step further. I downloaded a menu list from online as well. Some helpful soul had created an Excel sheet of family menus. So I could now have a 6-week chart of what you're going to eat. So then I can plug that into my ordering system. And so I don't have to go shopping. I don't have to plan menu. It's all outsourced. And I think that's the next big wave. And we talked about tier 2 towns and how are they going to benefit from all these new things for which they can't buy. Well, that's e-commerce, and e-commerce does really, really well in tier 2 towns for the same reason. Because the aspirations of the youth anywhere are the same. It's just that maybe previously there was no retail outlet where they could buy the stuff, but now they can, and they do it online. And something else that doesn't usually get talked about, I mean, everybody cites you with stuff about how, oh, these people don't have internet access or they don't have smartphones and that's why they can't actually buy online. But India, I mean, how many of you have dealt with an agent of any sort? Agent. Any agent. You know, for a passport, for a gas connection, anything, you wanted an agent, right? Great. Now, that's exactly what's happening with e-commerce. We have agents. So my driver doesn't buy directly online, but he has somebody else, a cousin who comes home, shows him all the stuff and says, what would you like to buy? Buys it, gives it to him and collects the money. And so I would use a term called assisted e-commerce because that's far more popular in India, and sooner or later retail shops, small ones in small towns, are going to say, okay, you tell me what you want and I will pick it up and I charge you a service fee and I give it to you. It's already happened. Anyone knows why on most online commerce sites, you cannot place an order greater than 10,000 rupees? Anyone knows why? No? Okay, so what happened was, yes, one person knows. No, it wasn't distance. It's actually based on fraud. Sorry? Cash on delivery was part of the problem, but not the full problem. Yeah, but the fraud was actually like this. What was happening was the retailers said, look, they all like this e-commerce stuff and it's really cheap out there. So what they would do was actually show people pictures of the stuff online and say, would you like to place an order? He'll place his order on cash on delivery, order 3-4 different sizes. It arrives in his small town and he calls those fellows and says, okay, look, I got you your cheap shoes. Now try them on. Which one do you like? And whichever fitted, he would sell. The other two, he would ship back saying, I'm not paying. And what was actually happening, why it bothers e-commerce guys is that they actually are throwing a lot of money into discounts. They don't actually make a profit on half the stuff they sell. And that is essentially to get you to try the product and become loyal to them. It wasn't a B2B model, which is what happened. And this we come to the great Indian innovation that if somebody wants it, we will figure out a way to make it work regardless of any technological access challenges that we have. So essentially it was assisted e-commerce where a shopkeeper decided he was going to order online and sell it to somebody else, bypassing the traditional retailer channel. Which is also why phones, laptops are no longer authorized to be sold online. So guys like Lenovo are fighting the same thing because people, rather than buying from the channel, it's not the individual consumer, it's now the B2B guy who says, oh, this is awesome, I like to buy e-commerce too. But we are going to see that this is all teething problems, and 5 years from now, this is just going to be one of those things where they said, oh, TV will never take off, and who needs computers? It's just going to be one of those conversations all over again. And I think, if you want to be a marketer today, it's not the good old Mad Men days. In those days, marketing was considered an art. and you really were creative. And I worked in the agency, I think, during the last of the heydays. I left in 98. And it was cool. I mean, people would open their drawers and pull out vodka at 6 p.m., and all work would only happen after 6 p.m. Random conversation about grass, and another client would open his drawer and say, "Oh, I have grass in my..." You're like, "What? You have grass in your office? I mean, what are you doing with this?" So those were really the hectic days of geniuses, long-haired types who were drunk and grassed out and everything else. Those days are gone. If you go to the agencies now, they look like BPO companies. They're all in suits and everything else. Because nowadays, creativity has a certain say, but it's mostly scientific. Most of the good marketers today rely a lot on data. It's a lot of analysis. There is some bit of creativity left, but it's again shaped. There's a whole science of neuromarketing, if you've heard of it, where they can actually predict which is the happiest moment in your product consumption. So when you buy a packet of chips, any guesses what's your happiest moment? Sorry? When you're opening the pack. Okay, almost there.
The first bite.
Incorrect. Okay, the point when you open the pack and you're taking out a chip, but you haven't had your first bite, because the anticipation is always more exciting to the brain than the actual taste. So if you actually see some of the ads, and you know the ones I'm talking about, they show a picture of this girl with her mouth wide open but the chip not in it. That's based on actual neuromarketing, where they wired up a person with electrodes, made them eat chips and figured out which is the time the brain gets happiest, and then put the picture on the pack. Nowadays, if you see, in the olden days when we had a 30-second ad and we edited to 10 seconds, it was based on our own gut feel and, client's gut feel and everything else. Today, again, they do the same thing with neuromarketing. They wire people up and say, these are the 10 seconds that resonated most with the brain, so we'll chop off all the other bits and put the 10 seconds in. So I see a lot more of science, and people used to laugh saying, why would someone do engineering and then do an MBA and do marketing? But finally, it seems to all make sense, because technology is now a huge part of marketing, and it's really nice to start working with an SAP and an IBM and LinkedIn and Salesforce, and all of them. They're all trying to sell to the CMO, because the CMO effectively has one of the largest IT budgets in the organization today, and that's a huge transformation that's taking place. So I think my time is up, but I do want to leave you one thought. I mean, Anurag talked a lot about entrepreneurship and creating employment and so on, but I would like to advise you all to create unemployment. And what I mean is, traditionally in India, when we say provide employment, we mean lifetime employment. We don't want to create a situation where the employee has so much money that they don't have to work anymore. But it's only when someone has so much money that they don't have to work anymore that they can start actually thinking about true social change or creative stuff. If you look at the US, if you look at many of them, they rely on the government handouts or whatever to run their startup. If I look at my own experience, and I mentioned two of my colleagues who are standing for elections, I somehow think that if they had to earn a salary to afford their daily life, they wouldn't be in politics. The only reason that an educated, so-called intelligent, whatever person can join politics is because essentially I'm unemployed. I've already made my money from my startup or whichever it was. And if I look around in India, you do see a number of people who have made money from some companies which gave them ESOPs, and they no longer really have to go to work every day just for the basic necessities. And there are others who could achieve the same thing, but they would rather say, oh, I'll set up a foundation and give it to charity and so on. If you look in the US, companies like Google and Microsoft have again spawned a whole bunch of entrepreneurs simply because the ESOPs were sufficient for that person to take care of their basic needs. So they were actually free to do what they wanted to do without worrying about, the next meal for the family and so on. So I think it's great that so many of you want to be entrepreneurs. But I really would like you to think a little bit beyond creating just employment, but to create a situation where A, you go to work because you really enjoy it, and B, you create some employees who can also achieve the same goal of only going to work because they enjoy it. Thank you for your time.